Hello, and welcome back to another episode of It's Always Sunny in London. I am your host, Lugia, and with me are.
Oi, bruv, it's me, Drummart. This ain't crazy in Liverpool.
Hello, love. My name is Petty. I don't know. I guess I'll go with the accent too.
Yes, today we're going back to the past to play the shitty games that suck ass. We're going to 1960s London. Hell yeah.
When's the last time we talked about Edgar Wright? Was it Baby Driver?
Yes.
It was.
That was like episode 27, I
That was
think.
season 1.
So we've seen all of Edgar Wright's movies except
No, I
the
have
Cornetto
not.
trilogy. No, I'm saying like on the show we've talked about every Edgar Wright movie that wasn't in the Cornetto trilogy.
No, well, what have
Because
we done?
Scott
We've
Pilgrim.
done, we've done Scott Pilgrim and Baby Driver, and I think that was it.
Yeah, and
That's
these are
it.
the three. He's done 6 movies. 3 of them are in the Cornetto trilogy, and 3 aren't in the Cornetto trilogy. So we're
Okay.
his first non-comedy.
Yeah, that's right. This is
That'll be
actually
interesting.
a horror slash mystery, which caught me by surprise because Edgar Wright isn't really known for that kind of stuff. But hey,
And I guess his first movie was a zombie film. So,
what, Shaun of the
but
Dead? Well, that was a comedy horror.
yeah, that was a
Well,
comedy horror. And his next
this is
film, Hot Fuzz, was a
psychological
comedy
horror.
mystery. So I guess he like just took out the comedy aspect and like shoved the other two. The World's End is like about a pub crawl, so he's going through like different bars and stuff, meeting people from the past. So now that actually like I'm saying it out loud, these three, I guess this isn't that like incongruent. It's just the fact that it's not a comedy that's weird.
Since we have no news, I guess we'll just get right into it. So, a little background on last night on Soho. I don't really have much. So it was released on October 29th, 2001, directed and written by Edgar Wright, as well as co-written by Christy Wilson Carnes. This movie had a budget of $43 million, and it made $23 million. Unfortunately, it was a bit of a flop. I don't think that's anything new for Edgar Wright. Scott Pilgrim was also a major bomb.
Thing is like Last Night in Soho was a lot more like contentiously received, but also this movie came out in the middle of the pandemic,
That's
so it
right.
probably wasn't even his fault. Yeah, but it came out of the pandemic and it had a much more kind of middling reception than his other films, which were much more lavishly praised. But yeah, I don't know. It's still kind of surprising just because like even though like his earlier films didn't have like much box office success, Baby Driver did. Like Baby Driver was really successful. So
Just a couple fun facts. So the idea for Last Night in Soho was originally planned in 2007. And Edgar Wright himself was inspired by his parents' stories of their coming of age in the 1960s, and he remembers this one specific story of his mother and her friend who were being chased by a man.
right,
So I guess that's where some of the horror elements are in the movie. It was like from that one story.
that's interesting.
Last Night in Soho was also originally going to be a Baby Driver sequel instead, but
Wait, what?
yeah, well,
For real?
his next project was going to be a Baby Driver sequel, but he decided, you know what? Let's go for a completely different movie altogether. Thus, Last Night in Soho not being a comedy.
Ah, okay. So it's not a case where it was written with being a Baby Driver sequel in mind. It's just he swapped ideas
Yes.
to make a different movie. Okay.
But could you imagine though?
That would be the weirdest fucking shift.
So Anya Taylor-Joy, who is Sandy in the film, was originally going to be cast as Ellie, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like, there's not really a specific reason as to why. It's just like that was just a very interesting casting decision before Wright said, you know what, no, you're Sandy now. And unfortunately, this was the last film appearance of both Diana Rigg and Margaret Nolan because they unfortunately passed away after production wrapped up for this movie.
And Rick like passed away pretty recently. Yeah, I remember the news about that. We talked about a Diana Rigg movie not too long ago on Her Majesty's Secret Service.
That's right. Yeah. So I think that's all the background that I have. But what is Last Night in Soho about? Well, so our main character, Ellie or Eloise, I'm just gonna say Ellie because it's easier on my tongue, is going into college. She is a fashion major. She's going into the London College of Fashion, and she leaves her grandmother to go to her dorm. And her background is that she is enamored with the 1960s because her mother passed away at a very young age. She's been living with her grandmother for pretty much her whole life. So she kind of picked up on her grandmother's hobbies and her taste in music, and most importantly, fashion sense. And everything is going okay until she actually gets to her dorm, and she hates the people there. They make fun of her for wearing clothes that she made, and after a party that disturbs her sleep, she's had enough. She goes to an apartment all by herself, and rents it just to get away from all the noise, and things are okay so far. And she has these dreams where she's somebody else. She's this woman named Sandy, and she's living basically the high life. She's an up and coming singer. She's wearing clothes and having a fashion sense of the 1960s, and everything's going all right until more of the dreams happen and they slowly become more sexualized and violent. And yeah, what did we think?
So, as we said, this is quite a departure for Edgar Wright. You know, he's known for his comedies, his action comedies. This is significantly less comedic. It is not a comedy at all, and it leans much more into the horror and the violence and the sex, as you said. So this I did find this fascinating from that point of view, like how different it was compared to his other works. My big takeaway at the end of the movie, though, is that London fucking sucks. Like, whether you're in the past or the present, everybody in London is either a pervert, creepy, an asshole, or a murderer.
I've
Like,
heard that London
Jesus
food also
Christ.
sucks. So there's not much
Uh,
going
I've been
for
to
it.
London. I've been to
London
London
food's
once.
fine. It's fine.
I don't remember how the food tasted.
One thing I
But
want to talk about. Oh, sorry.
no, you go. You go. That was
One thing I just want to briefly go over is the cinematography. So, as we said before, Edgar Wright is known for his comedies, and this one isn't. I feel like you could still tell that this is an Edgar Wright film because of all the very creative shots that he uses in like almost every scene. An obvious example would be the dream sequence, the very first one with all the mirrors. But
mirrors.
there's
That yeah,
also some of the
that was
scenes with
great.
the flashing lights. Like you could tell, like there is still a great degree of style, which Edgar Wright is pretty much known for. Like he is a great visual director. Like whether you've seen Baby Driver or Scott Pilgrim or even Shaun of the Dead, like you're familiar with his style, and it's no exception
Same
here.
goes. The same goes for the soundtrack. Like
Oh
Edgar Wright
yeah.
knows how to make a banging soundtrack. Same case here. And again, like Baby Driver, it ties into the movie.
Well, here it's like a lot more old timey '60s songs.
Yeah, but it's still thematically relevant. But I'd say I enjoyed it. I will say this is a movie I feel like I need to watch a second time to fully get because my reaction to certain things right now is, huh, like not bad, huh, just like okay.
I think I can understand where you're coming from. I think with the way this movie progressed by the halfway point, it felt like it sort of shifted focus. Because when I was watching this for the first time and I saw the dream sequences, I thought Sandy was basically like an insert of Ellie. It's a personality that she can escape to because she's
Yeah,
living
I
the
thought
life
that
that she wants, and then like maybe as the movie progressed, that's a personality that she would have to learn to discard because it would be eating away at her.
yeah, I thought there was going to be a stronger connection between the two of them, but then you learn what exactly is going on and how it connects to everything.
I mean, I guess like the message is still like kind of there. Like there was something that Edgar Wright said where he's like he wants the movie to be like reminiscing about the past and why it's kind of wrong to do that. And again, for the first half of this movie, you could see that idea in fruition, and you know, and you have a feeling that like that's how it's going to end up, but it doesn't, because it goes from psychological horror to ghost story and then a whodunit. I think that's
Yeah,
the best
it
way I could put it.
it does feel like it's trying to do a bit too much at once. Like around the end, it feels like they're trying to throw so many like turns at you. Like, oh, this character was actually doing this whole time, or this character was actually important in a different way, or what the ghosts were. And I'm just like, well, slow down, slow down.
What did you think, Red?
All right. So I guess a change of pace from your guys' opinions. I didn't like this movie at all.
Oh, really?
I did
Really?
not think it was good. I'm gonna be honest. Like this is like by far to me like the worst movie Edgar Wright made. Like I enjoyed all of his other movies, but like I don't think I can say this is good. Yeah, I didn't like it. How do I put this? Like nothing that really like connects with me. I guess like after like the first half hour, I don't really think there's like much like I really got going for it narratively. Like I don't connect with the characters. It's really like flashy, like the direction got that kind of style, but it's also like distinctly like unsexual, which I feel like is kind of like a sort of mismatch due to like the nature of the film. Like I don't know how many okay, here's another funny thing actually I should mention. So this is a movie that very much riffs on other 60s horror movies. Most significantly Repulsion and well, Repulsion, The Tenant, Rosemary Babies. Basically, this is a Polanski movie. This movie is trying to be the works of Roman Polanski, who we've talked about before on this episode. But I didn't show you guys his horror movies, so this might you probably aren't going to get what I'm going for. But there's something weird about like knowing exactly what a guy's going for and then just seeing him completely fail on like every mark. I didn't really find anything he was saying particularly profound. Like it was almost like too cartoonish. Like I'm not sure like what lesson
I
was
can
being taught. Like it was like the 60s were sexist. Yeah. Austin Powers told me that. What other lesson is being taught here? And it was like, men are too horny, but they were too horny more back then. So be careful what you look fondly on. Like that's a dumb message to me. Like again, especially because the guy who's making it clearly likes Roman Polanski, who's a rapist. He's a rapist pedophile, and you're trying to make a movie that's like reminiscent. So like I feel like I guess maybe that's the point. Like he's trying to like make a, but like also like there's something that kind of feels hollow when like you're trying to make a movie that's in the same vein of a rapist pedophile, but the rapist pedophile actually has like a much more powerful like feminist message to his work than yours are. These are just kind of like stream of thoughts. I'm not sure I'm articulating myself the best, but
I can kind of understand.
Eloise was like interesting. I thought she was interesting, and there was like some interesting elements about her, but I don't really think they really like exploited that much. She's like a fish out of water, a little bit neurotypical, and she's kind of like escaping into the past somewhat, and a lot of it is like her taste, her kind of nostalgia is sort of like reflecting, I guess, her distaste of like modern times. But I don't really think they do like much with it. I really don't think there's much of like connection between like that they're really making between like modern times and the past because like they don't really make either seem particularly better. How was I going to say this? Anya Taylor-Joy's character, what's her name?
Sandy.
Andy.
Sandy. Her character feels like very light. Like I don't think there's much
Again, I thought
to
Sandy was
her as a
supposed to be a
character.
character that Ellie created herself, that she would embody, and then
That's
later,
what I thought.
yeah, and
But
then
like
later on, like
Yeah,
she
it's
would
like a
we
real
all thought
later
person.
that.
become her. Like you see her change her hair and like the way she dresses, but that's not really what it comes down to.
Yeah, so like ultimately, like what does any of that mean? Like you can't it feels like it's trying to do like two things at once. It feels like it's trying to do this kind of like escapist, being John Malkovich, like, oh, I'm a whole different person, or like Midnight in Paris, or like Coraline, where like, oh, you kind of like go into this fantasy nostalgia world, but it's not what it seems. But then they like try to make her like a real person, but she never feels like a real person, and it kind of feels like weird. Part of it reminds me of Perfect Blue. You guys remember Perfect Blue?
Yes.
You know how the last act they kind of had like Mima's like persona, and then like her actual self,
Mm-hmm.
and even like that kind of lady that kind of like took on this kind of like I feel like they was trying to do like a kind of similar thing there with like the old lady, the image, and then like herself, and even has like a kind of an idea of like the sexual violence and like entertainment thing going on. I feel like it was a lot more like kind of clear cut and a lot more compelling in that film. And I guess it's not like a great thing to just say like, oh, I don't really like this movie because I think like I've seen like a dozen movies that did it better. This kind of is like what I'm feeling. It's just like I've seen this done better, and I don't really think this is really done much. And again, like even like on its own merits, I think the direction is like really fun half the time, but I also feel like it kind of pulls its punches on others. Like again, when it comes to the actual like sexual aspect of the film, and again, like I don't really think they do really a good job like making you feel Anya Taylor-Joy's character as like a person when that's kind of like almost the point. Like that you should be viewing her as a person, but like it never makes the shift. Like she's still just kind of this ethereal like almost seems like symbolic like when she's killed, and it was like that's not really
Like it wasn't supposed to feel real.
like it doesn't really like commit to like one thing. It feels like it's like in this like kind of like ambiguous area of like trying to say a lot but not saying anything. I don't know, it doesn't feel raw enough, I guess. Like it's too slick. Like when I was like telling you earlier about like why the kind of direction kind of bothered me, because like I think like the actual like dance sequence, all that stuff, that was great, and like some of like the horror stuff and the transitions were good, but I feel like it just is it's missing something, and I think it's just not raw enough. Smith, I think that's the guy's character. He was a bit odd in this. Um,
The old man.
oh, Matt Smith, he was like the dude. He was like the one that actually like did the sexual assault stuff.
Oh, Jack.
Jack,
Oh,
Jack.
yeah, him.
His character was like odd, right? Like what? I don't know how to like describe it, but it was like, did you guys see Morbius?
Nope.
He's in Morbius too, and like
Oh yeah,
as
right.
the villain. I'm not saying they're kind of similar, but like it's kind of similar.
Have you seen Morbius?
Part of it. I didn't finish it, but yeah. What's funny about is Matt Smith. He actually does play kind of like a creepy dude who has like strange power dynamics in that Game of Thrones spinoff, and I know he can do it well, but like here it's like cartoony. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's not particularly like raw. It doesn't really say like as a feminist work, it's not particularly like powerful. It's reminds me of Promising Young Woman in a way in terms of like post Me Too feminist films, in that it feels like it kind of like pulls its punches a bit and is a little bit hollow.
I felt like it should have stuck with its guns instead of trying to transform into something else.
Yeah, it feels like he had a lot of ideas but didn't really like
Yeah, it's like I said before. It
stick
feels
it.
like it's trying too much.
Yeah, and I mentioned Polanski, but another thing I should mention is it reminds me of a lot of like Italian kind of giallo films, like Lucio Fulci and stuff like that. Those also cover a kind of similar vibe, like Possession, The Beyond by Fulci. Again, it never like goes like nearly as like bold or as far as those do. Like nostalgia, violent misogyny, and like sexual exploitation, and it doesn't like really like. I feel like it's more focused on like nostalgia than the actual like sexual violence, and I don't think that was a great choice. Like you kind of mentioned it before, but like I feel like it's kind of weird like to come out of a movie like this, and my takeaway is like, man, the '60s kind of sucked, or like, man, London kind of sucks, and not like again when I came out of Repulsion, I feel like I came out with like a lot more, or like any like giallo film, I come up with like a lot more like in regards to actual like in terms of like a feminist reading. I feel like that I feel like my point isn't coming across clear, but like I don't think this is feminist enough. Is almost like my point. And like I feel like it's too hinged on like trying to like be like a kill the past thing, but like doesn't even like do a good job killing the past. Doesn't really make the present seem much better. It doesn't like there's no like real like continuity. It just kind of seems like things were shitty back then. It's shitty now. Nostalgia's bad, but also like if it's still shitty now, like what's your real commentary on nostalgia? Like it's an escape, but like, oh, this escape, there's some bad things about the escape, and it was like, well, yeah, but like that's not insightful, you know?
Do you think it would have been better if like the landlady character was like removed from the film as a whole?
Maybe.
Because I think a lot of the problems that you have also kind of stem from her and how the movie
Yeah.
treats
uh,
her as just like this serial killer.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like the serial killer is like a woman, so like that's another thing that kind of like undercuts it a bit. But and, like there isn't much commentary going on there. Let's see what else.
The old man.
Okay, that twist was actually kind of interesting, like how he was a cop, but like also why the fuck did he act like that, like before? But,
Because
like
he's
whatever.
old. I don't know.
Yeah, but another thing I want to mention is Roman Polanski making like all those feminist movies was like deeply hypocritical, given that he was like a virulent, misogynist. He was a horrible person to women. What I think is interesting about this film, and this isn't really like a positive or negative, but I just think it's interesting, is that I feel like this film is also hypocritical, but like in a completely different way than Polanski was, because Polanski made like made feminist movies, but was like a misogynist. When this film is like an anti-nostalgia movie, but it's so clearly made by someone who's deeply nostalgic for the past. Like it's all like it feels like he's almost like ashamed that like he has like such affection for like 60s culture when he has like a distaste for it like at the same time. And because like one, if you've seen Edgar Wright's like other work, his obsession with nostalgia kind of runs like a bit deep. Like Scott Pilgrim is like deeply like drenched in kind of nostalgia for the 80s and 90s, and well particularly the 90s with like video games and the kind of 90s rock culture, which I think was interesting. That one was much more or less of a negative view on it, which is kind of funny because the comic actually did have a bit more of a negative view on it, but his film didn't. So that's interesting, kind of like shift in perspective, I guess. I've always considered Edgar Wright to kind of be like a British Tarantino in a sense, and I feel like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood kind of I think is a better exploration of what this is trying to be, because that's a deeply nostalgic film for the 60s, but it also kind of like it doesn't try to hide every aspect of the 60s. A good chunk of it does surround kind of like the hippie movement and the violence that was done upon Sharon Tate by the Manson family. Like it doesn't nearly delve into it as much as like this, but I feel like there was more said there. Funny enough, Sharon Tate is Polanski's wife, so there's another kind of like element there. Austin Powers, like I said this as a joke earlier, but like this movie reminds me the most of like Beyond Repulsion is the Woody Allen movie, Midnight in Paris, because that's a movie about a dude who's basically traveling to like golden age Paris, like time travels, and it's like the same movie, like almost with like this kind of exploration nostalgia. Except like it's much more actually like centered on the theme of nostalgia, rather than trying to do this kind of like hard giallo thing. And that's kind of like
Is it
I feel like
about
the issue with this movie is that it's trying to be Repulsion and it's trying to be Midnight in Paris when it should have just picked one.
was that supposed to be like about a time in his life, like in the past, or just a time period?
No, it's a similar deal to here Last Night Soho, where they didn't live in that time period. They're just obsessed with that.
Okay, okay.
Like they just like the aesthetics and the art and the culture of that period. And that also is a film that's kind of like anti-nostalgia. Like that's sort of like it kind of has like an Evangelion take on it, where like it doesn't like trash nostalgia like entirely, but like because it'd be hypocritical to, because no one making films on nostalgia aren't nostalgic. But it also is very critical of it. And I feel like its criticisms are much more kind of like poignant, insightful. Again, same with Evangelion. Evangelion is another thing I say compares to this, because that's also about escaping nostalgia, but also deals with like sexual violence, power dynamics, and whatnot. If you guys haven't noticed, I like movies with the themes that this film has. Like most of my favorite art has the exact same themes as this film has, which I guess is why I take so much issue with it, just because like I feel like it doesn't really have a new perspective, and even if it didn't have a new perspective, like it's not saying anything like particularly, it's not really saying anything when there's a lot to say. But also like how they try to connect nostalgia and like the kind of sexual violence things, I feel like it doesn't really like tie them together that well. Watch Repulsion and Midnight in Paris. Hopefully Edgar Wright's next movie is good. This is kind of I think this is just a dud, but yeah, I don't know. I can talk about how it is as like a horror movie because like as a horror movie, like, has like a lot of jump scares, but like I'd say they're decently well done. The scares again, a little bit weird to kind of explore this particular kind of trauma. Like again, this kind of jump scares is a bit of an odd choice since usually the kind of horror that explains these themes have much more of a David Lynch.
Like a build up.
Yeah, kind of like if you ever seen like The Exorcist or like and again Rosemary's Babies or a David Lynch movie. Again, now that I mention it, David Lynch kind of has like David Lynch's works also explore nostalgia and sexual violence too. Wow, this has been done a lot. Like I did not realize how many fucking movies explore nostalgia and sexual violence.
I think when it changed to like becoming a straight up horror film, like
I
I
actually thought
wasn't
I thought the first half had a lot of potential. Actually, like I feel like I'm shitting. The
oh,
first
oh
half
definitely. Like I'm with you on
set up a
there,
lot
but
of interesting stuff. It's just I don't think it delivered on anything it set up.
like I wasn't completely against it like turning into a horror movie like and having it be about like a haunting in the room. And then it changes to oh, it turns out the landlady was Sandy the whole time and she actually killed all the men who are the ghosts that you see and the ones that are yelling at you. I mean, granted they were shitty people, but still they didn't deserve to die. I felt like it lost me there.
Again, I feel like there should have been more of a connection between Eloise and Sandy to really, I don't know, justify it.
That's the thing. They had it, and then they lost it by having Sandy be a real person.
They try to throw so many twists at you, like, oh, that creepy guy, this is actually what he's doing. Or the landlady who's barely been in the movie, she's actually incredibly important in this scenario. And again, the ghosts that she's seeing are actually the victims, and Sandy wasn't the one who was murdered. And I'm like, you're throwing so much at me here.
It throws a lot at you, but also doesn't like. I feel like there isn't like a ton there. Like that's a weird thing. It feels like it's so much but so little. I feel like I came
I
off
don't
more
know. This
negative than I
is
intended to, just because like I didn't really
No, that's
collect
fine.
my thoughts that well.
I mean, you had a different viewpoint than us. Like that's completely
yeah.
fair. I mean, I think we all agreed that this should have been like a completely different movie by the end, but still.
Yeah, again, I'm not against it turning into a horror movie. I was just very thrown off.
Thing is, I knew it was a horror movie like before going in, but like
I
it was a
didn't.
very it was a
That's
very
the
different
thing.
type of horror movie than I expected. Like it's just not like it's not the it turns into like it's this jump scare fest like oh like mind bendy thingy when it's like well this is like the material isn't like suited for this style. Like maybe it could be because I guess like Giallo films do definitely like got like that kind of like theatricality and flair to it, but it's just missing like the sleaziness that it. I don't know. I'm not articulating myself the best today, but I think like through the mix of stuff, you guys can like kind of figure out what I mean. But like I don't know.
I guess one last comment is that, in a way, this movie kind of reminded me of Lee Winnell's The Invisible Man, where it focuses on this girl who's trying to figure out if somebody's actually dead, and there's the
And
whole theme of, abuse
and then
and
it's the
sexual
fucking
Yeah,
assault.
invisible suit from the science lab, baby.
that's another thing. Like that Invisible Man is a good film, and I think it kind of explores kind of like a similar kind of idea here with like control and there's even the scene where like she goes to police and like they don't believe her because what she says sounds insane, but like
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
so like again, this is like such like a well-worn like material in the horror genre, but like I don't think it has enough balls. Like that's the thing. Like this is like a very kind of grindhousey thing. Like if Tarantino directed it, I think it would have been better because Tarantino has like the appropriate amount of like sleaze to him. Edgar Wright is like too clean. Edgar Wright like works for Scott Pilgrim, which is also about messy relationships, but like that's messy relationships kind of like under this veneer. Like I know a lot of Edgar Wright's like previous films are kind of like these kind of like genre kind of like deconstruction things, but like I don't think this is a genre that like Edgar Wright's like suited for. Because like Baby Driver is kind of like a sort of like an examination on like kind of heist flicks. It's kind of his take on like The Driver or Drive or something like that. Hot Fuzz is kind of like it examines kind of like buddy cop stuff, Shaun of the Dead horror, and there's always like some extra like layer to it. Like The World's End is like an alien invasion movie, but it's also kind of about like being kind of stuck in the past. And like, ironically, I actually think like The World's End, that's what this movie it's that's like Edgar Wright's done this movie before better. The World's End, like that's a horror kind of movie about like a creepy town that's deep, like that's exploring kind of nostalgia and wanting to be in the past again. Granted, this was more about being in his childhood rather than like escapist entertainment, but it's like it's still a similar idea. He was almost there, but like I think he was just like he made some bold directing choices, but I don't think he went bold enough or bold in the right direction. So not like a terrible movie. Like I if you watch it, like I'm sure you'll get something out of it. Like you'll. But I'm just disappointed because like it feels like this movie was like almost good, but it was just like missing like an important piece. Ultimately, I don't recommend it, but I don't know. You guys have anything else you want to say?
I Not really. I think overall I did end up liking it. It is probably my least favorite Edgar Wright film I've seen, but like I could see what he was trying to go for. I just wish like he stuck with an idea though.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat as you, Lugia.
Honestly, even if like he didn't stick with an idea, I feel like if I just connected with the characters more, it would have worked. Because like when I'm thinking about Edgar Wright's other movies, like I actually like really like his characters. Like the characters in Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, World's End, Baby Driver, Scott Pilgrim, very well-rounded characters. But here they seem very flat, and because of that, it just makes this like it feel a bit hollow. Like I feel like people have accused Edgar Wright of being style without substance in the past, and I strongly disagree with that because I feel like his characters and like themes are generally like pretty. This is the one time where I think they're right because it's very stylish, but there isn't much to the themes, and there isn't much to the characters. So yeah, I know some people like style without substance though. So like,
I
if you're
think
that
in
type of person, check it out.
I think in some cases style is substance. If that means anything,
Yes,
but
I agree. I just don't think it's in this case because
like
I feel like
when you have when you
the
have
style.
something that's just juggling ideas like in front of your face, it's like the style then just sort of takes a back seat and then that becomes the main focus.
The style is like very much the idea is so important to Scott Pilgrim. Like I feel like the film would not work if it was not stylish. Like on the actual theme, like I feel like there's substance in the actual like stylistic part of it. Same with like some Woody Allen films. Like earlier today, I saw this yesterday, but Played Against Sam, which was that movie about Casablanca. But here's the thing, it kind of does that thing that adaptation does, where like as the movie goes along, it actually kind of like becomes more fictionalized, and the last shot of the movie, the last scene of the film, is like almost shot like identical to how the last shot of Casablanca is, and you can think that but like that to me, that's style and substance. Like that's like them kind of like it wouldn't work if it didn't have like that style, you know? Style and substance can go hand in hand, and I think it does like in Edgar Wright's other films. I just don't think it does here. Actually, I got one more random thought. Since I brought up Played Against Sam, that movie is also about a guy who's obsessed with like the past, and is trying to emulate a person from the past like nowadays to like sort of make himself more confident. So I was like, huh, that the same guy who wrote that, Woody Allen, also wrote Midnight in Paris. So I don't really think about that.
Okay, if that's everything, then Patrick, I believe it's your turn.
All right. I don't really know how to transition into this recommendation, but I'll do my best. I don't believe we've talked about a film with Josh Hutcherson in it, have we?
Versus
Uh,
Terabithia?
We haven't talked about Bridge to Terabithia.
We haven't?
no.
No, we
Oh,
haven't.
I feel like I might have made a joke about it before then. Okay, Bridge to. I don't think we've talked about a Josh Hutcherson movie.
Okay.
Because we definitely didn't talk about
Why do
Hunger
you
Games. I think you mentioned Five Nights at Freddy's once. Oh no, he was in Disaster Artist. We did talk about him.
what? Oh, okay.
Well,
Well,
there you
He
go.
played Johnny. He played Denny. He played
vaguely.
Denny.
Vaguely. Anyway, this so okay, we are going back to Josh Hutcherson after a long while. I didn't even realize, but okay. And it's funny you bring up Bridge to Terabithia That's not the movie, but there's a connection. Bridge to Terabithia is, I think what most of us know Josh Hutcherson for from the 2000s. I'm pretty sure
Bridge to
that's the first movie.
Terabithia. I saw him in a lot of movies as a kid. Actually, now that I think about it, because there's Bridge to Terabithia, but there's also Zathura. Do you guys remember Zathura?
You
I
don't
do
need to
remember
list all of
Sathura,
them.
actually, yeah.
Oh, I'm not. It's just
I'm
like, do you remember Zathura? Because that's like the
I
first movie
remember
I think I saw
Zathura,
him in.
yes. But no,
And
here's the funny thing. Here's the funny thing. Bridge to Terabithia was a Josh Hutcherson movie that released in 2007. That's not the Josh Hutcherson I moved. That's not the Josh Hutcherson movie I saw in 2007. That distinction goes to a film that nobody fucking remembers called Firehouse Dog.
What is it with you and obscure dog movies? First Eight Below and now this?
I don't
he's
know.
just like obscure animal movies and obscure kids movies in general. Because like fucking Hoot, fucking Furry Vengeance, like
Guys, odd children's films from the 2000s give me life. What can I say?
yeah. Have we talked about the Oogie
Here's
Loves
the
Big
weird
Balloon
thing.
Adventure? Because
We've joked
That's,
about it.
here's
We
the
haven't
thing.
talked about it.
all right.
That's your territory. Firehouse Dog and Hoot, that's mine.
Yeah. Do any of you guys remember Journey to the Center of the Earth?
I saw it once as a kid and I
I
forgot
did see
everything
that.
about it.
I distinctly remember like watching that movie, and then I saw the sequel, and for some reason Brendan Fraser wasn't in it, and I was like really fucking pissed because like, well, why the fuck is The Rock here? And like, it's still the same kid, like it's still Josh Hutcherson, like in both films. So I'm like, what the fuck? Why is so many weird movies? That movie was 4D. Do you guys remember like that shit? Like the seats shook
I
and crap. It was
think you mentioned
fucking
Spy
weird.
Kids at one point.
No,
We
that
float
was
them at the
Smell-O-Vision, but like
playground.
this one was like a suit. Like I don't know, fucking odd, man.
Firehouse Dog is a movie I saw in theaters when it first came out, and I completely forgot it existed until like a few months ago. I don't know what caused me to remember it, but I'm just like, you know what? Fuck it.
I've
So out
never
of
heard of it
curiosity,
before, so
is this gonna be like
Yeah.
Furry Vengeance? Where like halfway through, I'm gonna realize I watched this with you.
You didn't watch it with me. We didn't
Okay.
know each other back then. Point
Anyway,
is, Firehouse Dog is next.
all right. So that's gonna be it for tonight. Thank you everybody for watching, and you know where to find me.